Our appointed time, we'll call the meeting to order. And our first order of business will be to bring a couple of online participants. Paul, is there more than one? No, Danny won't be. It is Paul Rosenbaum. Can I have a motion to allow Paul Rosenbaum, Phil, and Jimmy? Paul, are you out there?
Yes, I am, and I'll keep my phone on mute so you don't hear any background noise.
Perfect. Very good, thank you. Approval of the minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, we got to vote on Paul, and so please vote. I am delinquent taxes for I'm not bringing that one up, Megan. Is everybody getting that vote to come up? I'm not. Or do we do this? Do we need to do this one voice vote? Okay.
No, it's not. It's available on the iPad. Everyone else has voted.
Okay. Well, welcome to my world. Yeah, mine's coming up with the voting on delinquent taxes from Ways and Means. So I'll do my best to refresh here, but can I voice vote myself? All right, I'm an aye. Okay, informational items, I ready to move on? Can't remember.
Ooh, motion carries
Yeah,
unanimously.
ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to informational items. Oh, we did the minutes. We did. That was getting it on. Okay. Rosenbaum. Approval of the minutes. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to bear with me a little bit. So moved Jimmy and seconded by Phil. Right. Okay. Is any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, please vote. Sorry, Megan, I'm not getting that one. Count me as an aye. Motion carried. Informational items. Now I got it. Third time's a charm. Tri-County Regional Planning Commission minutes. Do I have a motion to? We don't, that's just informational. Okay. Sorry about that. Unsafe structures. No comments, questions, development summary. Okay, so those reports will be filed. Jimmy?
My Administrator Braun is here. At the end of the year, can you just again recap the development summary. I know you touched on the houses last year, but where we were on average for commercial and residential builds last year.
Sure. So each month we present to you the development summary that was the permit specifically issued for a particular month. That always itemizes new residential construction, which has always been a highlight, as well as non-residential construction. While our permit numbers were down across the board, our revenues were actually up, and that was based on the number of single-family dwellings has increased or did increase in 2025. It was our highest in several years, as a matter of fact, and then our non-residential construction actually increased as well. That was significantly bolstered by the solar farm developments that have been issued over the past year that aren't necessarily online yet, but those do carry a high dollar permit valuation. So overall, permits down, revenues actually up.
Thank you.
And that brings us to zoning cases. First one, zoning case ZBA 2025-0057, petition of NJR Clean Energy Ventures 3 Corporation. And Andrew is here to direct us through that. Oh, I'm sorry, I need a motion to put this on the floor. Betty and Marcia. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a special use request actually from two different sections because there's dual zoning on these properties. So a special use request from section 20-5.2.2.2.h of the Unified Development Ordinance, which allows for a special use in the A2 agriculture zoning district for a solar energy generation facility, and a special use request from section 20-5.3.2.2.f of the Unified Development Ordinance, which allows for a special use in the RR rural residential zoning district for a solar energy generation facility. The petitioner is NJR Clean Energy Ventures 3 Corporation. They are represented by a large contingency here in the crowd today, but Julie Workman will be their representative if there happen to be any questions. There was a very brief slide deck that was passed out to each of the members that they did present at the Zoning Board of Appeals in December. But their request is to construct and operate a 60 megawatt AC commercial solar energy facility across 180 acres of the subject parcel's combined 307.74 acres. The subject parcels consist of agricultural fields, a single-family dwelling, which is occupied by the owner of this property, Mr. David M. Hurst, timber, and then various small farm plots. These are all located in the area surrounding 7813 South Hurst Drive in Hollis Township. Of note, there were 0 consents and 0 objections on file at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Parcels to the north consist of agriculture, timber, and single-family residences. This includes the Meadowview Estate subdivision located to the northeast. According to the petitioner's site plan, the closest residential dwelling would be located at least 150 feet from the project. Parcels to the east consist of single-family residences and timber. The former Edwards Coal Power Plant is located southeast across U.S. Route 24. Parcels to the south include agriculture, timber, Ameren transmission lines, and a 260-foot telecommunications tower is also located south of the proposed development. It's important to note that the elevation of the project area is naturally higher than that of parcels to the east, south, and west, which when combined with existing vegetation in all directions will result in a low impact to visibility. Section 7.17.3 addresses the minimum conditions for a special use permit for a commercial solar energy facility, and the petitioner's application demonstrates that these standards will all be met. Existing road frontage does exist in several locations. To the north is West Tuscarora Road. To the east is U.S. Route 24, and to the south is South Hurst Drive. The petitioner currently intends to access the proposed solar farm from South Hurst Drive. There's an existing driveway that extends from the public right-of-way. Staff did recommend approval with 7 restrictions. Those are the same 7 restrictions we've seen customary over the last year or so. To note, number 5, approval of this special use is restricted to NJR Clean Energy Ventures 3 Corporation or its affiliates. The special use is not transferable to any entity not affiliated with NJR Clean Energy Ventures 3 Corporation. Number 6, development of the commercial solar energy facility must commence within 3 years of special use approval. And number 7, the owner of the commercial solar energy facility must submit contact information for the company to the Department of Planning and Zoning by the end of each calendar year and upon any change in relevant contact information with the company. I'm happy to answer any questions, and once again, representatives from the company are here as well.
Anybody have any questions for Andrew or Administrator Sorrell on this one? Chairman Dillon?
Administrator Braun, would it behoove us to actually make the 3 years, say 3 years or state law, so that we don't need to, because there has been discussion of either 4 years or potential 5 years. I think 5 years in the state legislation to give it to them, but we will have to update that here. So should I amend it to say the newest legislation actually changed it to 5 years? To 5 years is what, according to the state. So that will supersede this, and I don't know if we should change that now in the ordinance saying 3. It's going to be 5 is what I think the newest. There's FIJA, CJA, and whatever the formulation is, whatever they call this last one.
So if and when the governor signs that bill into effect, it will actually impact what we have. That was the case with previous zoning cases that have been approved, and staff has gone forward with the direction that we cannot be more restrictive than whatever the state has enacted, and therefore, if it is in fact 5 years, then this restriction would, through the state's laws, be 5 years rather than 3 years. So the same goes for perhaps setbacks, whereas the county ordinances maybe in 2018, 2019 set a different number, and now it might say 50 feet. Well, 50 feet is substantially less than perhaps 140 feet when the case originally came forward. So at the time of whether it be approval or whether it be construction, we would revert back to the least stringent standards. And I'm happy to defer that question to council as well if there's a legal opinion.
He's talking about the
Chairman Dillon is referring to restriction number 6 on the planner's report, or page 3 of the agenda briefing communication.
3 years.
It says 3. We can put 3 years, but the state law is going to change it to 5 years. So I'm just saying, since we know that's coming, it's already passed. Should we just change that to?
I concur with Administrator Braun that we
Leave it.
want to be, we don't want to be more restrictive than we're allowed to be.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying it says 3 and state law is going to 5. So
But
should
it's
we?
not yet.
Not until whenever it becomes official, July. It's signed, so in June 1.
It hasn't been signed to my knowledge, and that once signed, there will be an effective date. We will come forward with ordinance amendments because we understand there are language that need to be changed. I think for all intents and purposes, whatever rules are in effect at the time of permitting are the rules that we move forward with. I understand this is not necessarily permit specific, so if you'd like to make that recommendation, I wouldn't say 3. I wouldn't say 5. You might say or otherwise in effect at the time.
And
Have a great
I was gonna say, if you want to postpone a vote on this, our office can do it.
No,
at
I
a
think
later
I'm
date.
fine. I think it's understood that state law is going to supersede that. I was just asking if it's going to be 5 years on there. I think if they're going to sign it. So on another note, I do think that this property, the way it is laid out, that this is a good use for that. 60 megawatts will be our largest. I think I did read that is equivalent of powering about 10,000 homes off of that. I would just say, after visiting some of the ones in here, and I don't know if I had the opportunity to express this to Administrator Braun yet, seeing the one that was just recently done in Brimfield, they use much more of what I would consider a country fence style, where they use the wood post and fencing. It looked a lot less institutional than the chain link fence that I've seen around some other ones with barbed wire running across it. fit much better out there and looked much better. It's basically, I don't know what they called it, but like a farm fencing type deal where it was wood posts and metal ran across it. It just fit the neighborhoods way better than actually seeing when you drive some of these other ones that are chain link and barbed wire on the top. It just does not look appealing in a country setting. If that could be something that could be thought about on the fencing or our fencing requirements. I don't know the cost of that stuff versus other things. It just appears better when you look at it.
Noted.
Any other questions, comments? If not, please vote. I will vote aye. Still not coming up.
Chairman Rulon, for the developer's sake, I think there's some concerns, and I've tried to express it for the board's sake in here, is if we added the restriction because we were having the issues of developments being sold quite a bit and not being able to understand who sold them specifically. I know that in the recent, there's 2 developments, this one included and another one coming up, that have some concern over that. I guess the idea for the board would to be understand, as long as the original developer has some sort of ownership stake through the end, I think that would be acceptable. Or 2, as we'll see on the next case that is coming, a simple mod of bringing, if you were looking to sell, bring the new person that you're looking to sell as a mod to bring it forward. That I don't think those restrictions are overly that strict that they can't be interpreted, that we wouldn't work through a sale process with a developer. We just don't want to go back to where we were, where it gets sold 3 times, chasing down who owns it. And as a valid point, some of these projects were spec'd 6 years ago, promises made to neighbors, and somebody might buy a new property next to it and have no idea that they've moved in across from a solar field. So the time restrictions are valid, and so are the making sure that the promises made around this horseshoe are kept. So I do think the board was willing to work with any developer on if there becomes issues with that, or wanting to sell the property through there. I don't think this board is so hard on that it's not, and we just don't want to see, we've learned from the past, and the past has told us that there's some not good actors out there. If that makes you feel any comfortable putting that on the record.
Yes.
For a second, thank you so much. Hi, I'm Julie Workman. I'm the attorney representing NJR. Thank you for being willing to entertain this idea. The notion is that my client has every intention of building, owning, operating this facility, but as a really big national company, they just are looking to have a little bit of flexibility in case they need it as a financing mechanism or otherwise. If something else comes up where they have some urgent need to sell this project. But we're willing to work with you on any language that you might want in order to ensure that a future owner / developer of this property will not just, leave it untended for 6 years or will leave it half finished. We would be happy to agree that you have approval rights over any prospective purchaser, or that the prospective purchaser is, has the credibility, the national reputation, the whatever criteria you think would be helpful to give you the assurance that they're not just some fly-by-night, that they're actually willing and able to come in and complete the project. So we're happy to work with you on that language. I guess my request is that over the next few days between this meeting and the board meeting on Thursday, maybe we can work on some language that achieves, and I very much appreciate what you're suggesting. I just have to confer with my client about the ownership stake, even if it's a small ownership stake. To me, that makes sense, but I want to confirm with them that that works.
If I'm interpreting Chairman Dillon's comments correctly, he is proposing that the solution lies at the event. So you would bring forward a potential purchaser um, rather than change language now that puts us into a condition of being inconsistent. We have in place an ordinance um, that allows these to still sell under those conditions. And if we change it for one company, we expose ourselves probably to, litigation. Why did you give it to this company and not give it to the other? Am I correct in your comments?
I'm correct. I think you're 100% correct in where I think there's already the mechanisms as the mods that we've seen, or as long as you retain some sort of ownership in it, I think the board's intent would be good moving forward. And you can, once it's live and you've generated it and it's Ameren's, you can sell it to however you want as long as you have even a small percentage through the end. Or if you want to outright sell it, we've seen, just as the next case has, as a modification. It's very easy. Bring the new owner next to it. So the process is already in place. I don't think the board's willing to waver from changing any of that language. I think there's already the mechanisms in places to handle that and move that forward. That should give the developer. I just wanted to put it on the record so that the developer would have some sort of comfort knowing that there is, because it does not, even though the developer, not saying anything bad, Julie,
Sure,
is
of course.
that saying that you have 100% or not 100%, that you have every intent of owning it, but then you keep bringing up the idea of selling it doesn't give a warm, fuzzy
Right.
feeling that it's actually going to follow through. So I think there's the mechanisms in place. The language is already there. We have one of the top administrators in the state with his office um, that will be willing to work with anything. So if there does, I want to be known as business friendly around here. So if there's anything that you need to come and say, we have a sale that's too good to be true, here's our new owner, meet through here. I think this board's willing to work through that with you, or as long as you want to have some sort of ownership in it, even if you sold off 75%, it's the LLC, and as long as you're attached to that LLC through the energizing portion of it, after that, you could sell it 3 times. We're not trying to restrict your business. It's just from the development portion part of that.
Sure, and that totally makes sense, and I really appreciate that. I guess the one nuance that I would be a little bit concerned about is just timing. If you do, and I know it sounds really disingenuous for me to say on the one hand, we plan to own and operate it, and then on the other hand, we want the ability to sell. It's just sort of giving us that flexibility. There's no intent at this point to sell whatsoever. But that being said, if a sale were to materialize, this process takes maybe 60 days plus or minus, which by the way is phenomenal compared to what I'm used to, where it's 18 months. That still could extend a transaction. Is there a way that you'd consider an administrative approval whereby we would not need to go through the full-blown notice and sign the entire process and multiple meetings before a potential buyer is approved? And again, we'd be willing to put any other restrictions on that make sense to you. It's sort of new territory for us too.
Andrew, would you be best to approach this? Because I don't think that process is, we're not approving the next buyer typically. They can sell it to anybody they want under the ordinance that says it doesn't stand alone. There's a process behind it that allows you to sell your investment. That ordinance is a reaction to people who invested solely in the right to develop solar, the permit, the special use permit that allowed them to develop there with no intention of ever doing so, but rather selling that benefit with it. And the project could sell, they could operate 5, 6, 10 years down the road. They could bring that permit in and say, we're ready to build. We didn't approve them to build. We approved you, your company, to build. And I think if that may be where we're hung up here, it doesn't say you can't sell it, but we have certain parameters that have to be met in that case. And it's not necessarily, if I'm correct, Andrew, it's not a long string of zoning meetings or zoning board of appeals in order to sell it.
I think we have two separate processes. So we have the process that we'll see just momentarily with our next case where there's a modification. It does have to do with the change of ownership, but primarily it has to deal with the change of the boundaries. And that's the main nexus for that modification. I don't think an administrative approval is appropriate for the sale. We had a company come here perhaps 3 months ago and ask these same questions and issue these same challenges. And ultimately, the county board and the land use committee determined that it was in our best interest to leave the restrictions as is. And so I do refer back to your comments just a moment ago where it may not be in our best interest, and just because there's other companies that have made this request who have been denied. So what differentiates? Once the certificate of completion has been issued, you can sell it just the same as you could sell your house. So the restriction restricts the rights to develop, not the overall ownership of the project. So I think that's where we have two potential. The group that came before us today, who we've worked with for the past several months, if not years in some situations, if they've had those conversations, they've made those agreements. That is our concern. We've chased companies for insurance information, contact information. We don't know who's working on job sites. There's a number of different factors that went into the development of this specific restriction that we've had in place since January of 2025. So I think there was 8 cases that we utilized this language on last year. And so to either go back to those 8 companies and offer them the same deal would be fair, or to just continue forward until we have a new plan in place. And as Chairman Dillon suggested, maybe that's through a modification.
So I would interpret this to mean that the permit could survive a change of ownership if the project was underway. In other words, the permit were activated and you were under construction and you sell at that point. It's a totally different thing in my mind. This takes a real estate attorney to understand when these rules apply and when they don't. But if you have not started it, asking the new owner to take a new permit makes perfect sense. If you've started the project or at some level of completion and selling at that point, I would have to guess that it's a different story. And we would be, I think, much more amenable to moving forward with a new owner once the project is underway, the permit is in an active phase. Now, that's just my own thoughts on it, but
That's a conversation that the State's Attorney's Office and Planning and Zoning can have. I would caution as we have a change in contractor, it requires a new permit. The permit I'm authorized to issue based on the special use. So if the special use is saying the permit can only be issued to that who has been approved for the special use, then technically I would interpret that to mean I cannot issue the new company a permit. But again, that gets into the legal weeds, and that's something that would have to be hashed out, I think, in a different conversation.
as a committee member, I'm inclined to not allow the flexibility in the interest of our being consistent, but to be willing to have a conversation on a case-by-case basis as it comes up. And I think that's what you described.
Agreed.
Just to follow up then, with respect to the comment that you had, Chairman Dillon, about if retaining a portion of ownership, is that something that you would deem to be considered on a case-by-case basis? Is that something that we should be?
I think as long as there's
Our-
communication going on, like if there's a potential sale, not to be fine, like where we had to search in the past who owned it. Like if something came about and you were going to sell it, as long as you're communicating with us, I think that's half the battle. And if you're going to retain some sort of ownership communication and then want to sell it at the end of the project. There's all sorts of different ways to look at this. I think until you know what that, we're all in hypothetical at the moment. So until you have a reality, I don't want to create a scenario for every hypothetical that's out there. So I think the rules that we have are really good now. And then when that case comes, whether it be, if it does happen, then we'll deal with that circumstances. I just want to let the company know that we're not going to be so tight and hard about it that we're not willing to listen it or impact your business if you have a partner that potentially would want to do this. But for the sake of it, I think we need to, as now it is how it is, and we'll work with you moving forward on things if that works for you, because we do have a long-standing history. These are the rules that we're in place, and we're not going to single out and treat people differently over there, because you're not the only one that doesn't like this new rule. There's others that do like it. So I know some of us have a tight schedule to move here, and we got another case. So I wouldn't call the question.
To that end, is there any other comments from committee members? Go ahead, Matt.
The only access up to there is all of it going to come in through Hearst Drive? And I guess maybe for Andrew, was that been worked out with that? I mean, that's a horrible truck traffic road, but at least it's been addressed.
The comments we received from the road commissioner indicate that there will have to be a road use agreement and further discussion, but it is the intention that South First Drive is the point of access for this particular project.
With that, if there are no other comments, please vote. All in favor? Well, Megan, record me as a nay. It's still not coming up here. So the ayes have it. So does that change? This one. Okay, okay. Okay, I gotta get it. Okay, all right. All right, moving on, zoning cases, ZBA 2025-0060, petition of Cornwell Solar LLC.
So moved.
Second, Marcia.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to modify special use number ZBA 20.20012, which was approved to allow for a special use in the A1 Agricultural Preservation Zoning District for a solar energy generation facility. This case was approved by the county board in 2022, which allowed for the development of a 40 megawatt AC solar facility across 3 parcels and 250 acres. The petitioner, Cornwell Solar, who is represented today by Mr. Helfers and Council Uphoff, are the new owners of the project. The original application was made by Trajectory Energy Partners LLC. These folks represent Sol Systems LLC. During the interconnection study, it was determined that the proposed capacity of the project would be reduced to 35 megawatt AC. It was also determined that there were additional electrical right-of-way easements required for this project. Unfortunately, those particular easements fall on properties which were not included in the original parcel numbers and legal descriptions, and so they are proposing to add 3 parcels, one of which is 2.57 acres, one of which is 5.01 acres, and one of which is 46.72 acres to the project boundaries. The subject parcels are located along West Lower Road in Princeville Township. So the three changes, though not necessarily all modifications, are the change in the owner-operator. It is still known as Cornwall Solar, but it will be Sol Systems LLC rather than Trajectory Energy Partners LLC. It is the right-of-way easements being added, which are legal description edits, and then they've also proposed to change the type of fencing. As we heard in our previous request, it was a recommendation that different type of fencing be used, and although that's not a specific ordinance regulation, they wanted to be sure that the board was aware that the fencing mechanism was changing. So there are 8 proposed restrictions that come with this case. The same 7 we've seen on all of our other cases, which include the transferability, the timeline to commence, and then the notification of ownership change. But the 8th one would be any approvals granted per case CBA 2025-0060 shall replace the restrictions of approval per case CBA 2022-0012. So the original restrictions would be thrown out, and these ones ultimately would replace with the modification. Zoning Board of Appeals recommended and unanimously.
Any comments or questions for staff? Hearing none, please vote. I'll be in. And it's unanimous. The ayes have it. Motion carries. And that will take us to public comment. Anyone? How about miscellaneous? Any miscellaneous? Marcia?
I just have a general question. It seems like we're getting into more of the bigger megawatt, solar facilities are being built. And this last one, I going through it, I don't see it, but the previous one, it said that the power would be then transferred to Ameren. Okay. Do we as a county have any say in, once it gets to Ameren, where that power is used? And the only reason I say that is that, I've heard stories of, these facilities are building power, but yet the community where they're located is still is still running short in power for their community, even though it's right in their backyard. So do we have any say or any input whatsoever in what Ameren does with the power? And I don't even know if I'm asking the question to the right person, but is there any discussions on that?
We do not specifically have any power, power being authority. What we've seen some of these applicants do historically is indicate that they would have power purchase agreements with some of the residents of the surrounding area, similar to where we might have home field energy, right? We have an energy agreement where we can potentially purchase power from them rather than through Ameren Direct. So we've seen that in some cases, but ultimately, once it gets to Ameren, it is power that's used anywhere within that specific Ameren territory. So that's not to say it's going to go to Mapleton, Dunlap. It could very well go to Ottawa, Illinois. We have no say.
Would it be possible to have a discussion with Ameren about that at any point? A representative of Ameren? See, It's,
Go ahead. Step to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Power is generated. I worked for SoCo 50. I got the background utility solar systems. Basically, when power is generated, it goes into, and you probably heard the phrase, the grid. Basically, electrical power, if it's not used after it's produced, it goes right back to ground. So what they do is they dump all this electricity into the grid. Say Caterpillar fires a foundry with their electric furnaces. That's where all the power goes at that moment. Your air conditioner kicks on, that's where the power goes for that instant. But the only way you could have power generated here, be guaranteed to be used here, is have a closed grid system, which is not, we don't have that. Nobody's got that. It's one giant grid. And that's a real simplification of what it is, but that's pretty much the way it works. Make sense?
So it's essentially a commodity.
It is a commodity. And you asked about, and Andrew hit on it a second. Soul System is building what's called utility scale projects. That's anything over 5 megawatts. Anything under 5 megawatts can be a community base. And he spoke about home life or home filled electrical. That's when they sell subscriptions to local people. But that power still goes into the grid, and they might be getting power that's generated in Wyoming, the state of, but it all gets dumped in the grid, but they pay their light bill to, say, Home Energy or whomever. But we build these three that we're building in Central Illinois, one in Tazewell, one in Peoria, one in Knox. Ameren is buying the power from us, and then they'll distribute it to their customers. Does that help at all or explain it at all?
yeah, yeah. But where does Ameren actually? They don't go to, say, California.
Well, sure they do. Yeah,
They do?
And I, it's been a while since I've messed with this part of it, but the country's divided up into separate little electrical fiefdoms. And I'm trying to think what ours is. I was on the, Senator Taylor appointed me to the Blue-Gray Alliance, which was Sierra Club and trades and power generators. Basically, we were trying to figure out a way we could keep the lights on, but maybe cut back on pollution through the coal-fired powerhouses. And like Mesa, we're Mesa right here. And it's a group of how many states? 11 states? And they have an auction every year, and they will auction. I don't know if you've noticed your Ameren bill's like tripled in the last year or so. Mine has. And because they had the MISO auction, and distributors such as Ameren bids into the auction, they say, well, okay, it's going to cost a minimum of this much for X amount of kilowatts. And they, as a distributor, can no longer generate the power they sell. Back it up a little bit more. Silco, back when I worked there, they owned Duck Creek, they owned Edwards Station. Wallace was on the river where Walmart is now. And they had the little powerhouse at Keystone Wire, and Caterpillar had Cogen. And that power was basically dumped into the grid, but Silco generated their own power. Well, they changed laws where distributors could no longer generate their own power. Ameren had to sell off all their powerhouses, coal-fired, pretty much got shut down. All you've got going for the most part in the state of Illinois, except for Powerton, are nuclear. So they have to buy their power from power generators. They no longer generate themselves. So it's kind of put us all in a bind because they've got rid of most of the power generation capacity with closing power coal-fired. That's 50% of our capacity, 40%. So now we're scrambling. That's why solar's going to help plug in and fill that need. But yeah, so it's as far as the company saying, okay, it's just going to be in this geographical area, it's not possible. Yeah. Any questions? I know I kind of rambled. Sorry about that. It's complicated.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other miscellaneous? Hearing none, meeting adjourned.